And we're good. Recording's live. Awesome. Where do I stand? This way? No, this way. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out to our user group meeting this month. We have a very empty room here physically, but we got a pretty good attendance online. So that's exciting to see so many people there. Hopefully we'll get some more to show up in the next couple of minutes. As you probably saw by the email going out, we're going to start a new year, new tradition kind of a thing. I thought it might be fun to have a moment of community spotlight or personal show off time or something like that at the beginning of each one of our meetings. So this is just open to anybody who wants to show off something that they've done cool. It can be as short or as long as you want. We can go 5 minutes if you just want to say, this is what I did, how awesome is it, to doing a little mini presentation for up to 30 minutes. Totally volunteer basis. We're hoping we're going to have more people show up. And even last minute things would be kind of cool. If you just did something yesterday at work and you're like, wow, this is really cool. I want to show off and tell people about how awesome I am, or inspire others, or give us some ideas or something like that. That's kind of the point of this community spotlight time, is just to give you an opportunity to share your skills or something cool that you've done with everybody else. So yeah, if you want to sign up for any one of those, if you've got something cool you want to show off, let us know. Like I said, in email in advance or day of would be great. We just love to have some more community participation and really to highlight the art of the possible, right? Like there's so many things that we can learn just by seeing what somebody else has done, and maybe take some of that back to our business or our work or our situations, whatever we happen to be in. So I'd like to start that, and hopefully we can get some more volunteers for that.
So you could, for the benefit of those watching the recording that just stumbled across it on YouTube later, all two of them.
Yeah.
You could maybe introduce the group and tell us what we're about when we meet and those kinds of things.
That's a valid point, yeah. So yeah, this is a Microsoft community group. Really, we focus a little bit more on the M365, the online platform, that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for Office or Excel or Word or stuff like that, we don't focus as much on that as we do on SharePoint Online, on Azure. But we're really open to just really any Microsoft topic. And yeah, just an opportunity to showcase and share and talk about the latest cool Microsoft stuff that's coming down the way. And like I said, with the community showcase, give us an opportunity to look at the art of the possible, see things that we don't normally see on a day-to-day basis, and try to expand our understanding of Microsoft and the tools that they've given us.
We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month at 4:30, live here at Journey Team or online in Teams.
We have regular emails that go out. If you want to be part of that email list, we are, is it UT SharePoint?
Info at
UT-SharePoint.com.
org.
Org?
Yeah.
Org, you're right. info@UT-SharePoint.org. You can email us there. We'll get you on the MailChimp list. We send out regular reminders of these meetings, as well as Teams links and things to join. If we get enough people showing up here in person, we might start bringing food in again. Right now it's just me and Kevin, so we're both fat enough. I don't think we really need a whole lot more food.
I will say that
I'm just glad one of us said it.
I will say that Journey Team has a break room next door. We had a vendor come in and look at it, and he said it's like Costco threw up in here. And so it's a very visual way to say that there's lots of food next door. So if you join us in person, we'll give you unfettered access to that free mini Costco.
I might go get a soda after I'm done introducing this
There
thing.
you go. Oh,
We do have another in-person.
we've increased by a third.
Wow.
We're
think we
talking
had-
persons and not body weight.
Heard Christian heckling us on there, so.
Yeah, with that percentage of increase in audience there in person, I mean, those numbers that percentage wise are amazing.
Yeah, we're growing every week, every month.
Every minute.
Even here earlier.
I wish I could be there, but as always, it's the meeting. That's why I was a couple minutes late. Meeting before, meeting right after.
Christian, you can say what you want, but we all know it's the increase.
Again, I'm just glad somebody said it, but yeah.
As Christian has demonstrated, this is a fairly informal meeting. If you have questions, you can just unmute your microphone and pop in the middle of it. If you want to put it in Teams chat, we'll have somebody monitoring that and trying to get the questions in front of whoever happens to be presenting at the time. Our presenter, I believe, is going to show up at 5 o'clock today, our primary presenter. So until then, I guess we turn the time over to Kevin for our.
Well, so I have 3 things that I would be happy to share, but before we listen to me blather on, does anybody online or in the room have something they'd like to share or tell us about that they've done that is cool or exciting?
That's fair.
Or maybe a question that we could help answer.
Don't you be getting aggressive on me, Greg.
That's at the end. Come on.
Yeah, so something you want to show off or question you might have. And I'm gonna count to 15 in binary before I start blathering again.
Be careful.
My wife can do that, actually. She can go all the way to like 250 on her fingers going in binary. It's crazy. She just does it like it's nothing. It blows my mind.
Is that why you fell in love?
Well, so the story that I tell people, and she hates it when I do this, but is that we were,
Is this recorded? It looks
it is recorded, yeah.
Perfect. That's all we needed.
She'll never watch this, so it's fine, but no, she was in
We
the.
can make sure she does.
She was in the same degree program as I. We're both computer science graduates. And so I tell people that I needed homework help. So I found the cutest person in the room and married her so that I could get my degree.
It also helps that she was very, very nearsighted and forgot her glasses that day.
Yeah, yeah.
Or were you more handsome back then?
Oh, I was definitely more handsome back then. I was about 100 pounds lighter back then too. She really liked that.
All right, so in the absence of volunteers from online, let's make this be a poll. We talked about this at our planning meeting and there was a definite feeling from the leadership, but I could present either how to build a enterprise level error correction framework or error reporting framework for Power Automate. And that's something that I think is really fun.
You do that in 20 minutes?
I can do that in 20 minutes.
All right.
That was my vote.
The second thing I could do is I can show you how to hook Power Automate so that it fires every time somebody stands up a new team site or SharePoint site, which is fairly tricky. And the third thing that I can show you is I can show you how to use sensitivity labels to encrypt your documents at rest and in transit so that only the people that you want to be able to view the documents can view the documents.
And whatever you don't show today still goes in the hopper for future meetings.
Sure, sure. So who wants to say which one of those 3 they want to listen to?
If we don't get any volunteers for next month, we're going to be listening to one of those other ones. So, there's a threat for you.
I think I have a speaker for next month, by the way, but if we were talking about stuff that we usually talk about at the end, at the beginning here. So I'm trying to lock it down.
Nice.
Anybody have a preference?
My vote's 1. I think Greg's vote's 1. Any online? You want to put it in chat or just speak up?
I say 1.
I would go with 2, but like I said, I'm not really able to pay attention too much. So, but
All right,
yeah, 1 sounds good too.
So.
Now I'm torn over, we should do 2.
Okay.
Sensitivity labels sounds kind of interesting too, but
Power Automate is a wonderful tool, but it is like so many developer tools or citizen development tools, something that a lot of times just gets tossed out and happens. And so you frequently have a situation where you've got a script that is failing and you don't know that it's failing until Microsoft sends you an email that says, hey, this has been failing for a month. Do you want to go fix it? And it could be that by the time that happens, it's just too late. So I came up with this functionality. This is my demo tenant. And I will say that nothing that this does uses even premium Power Automate. And so this is all stuff that you just get with the basic Power Automate. So let's start with this test error handler. This is a script that is designed to generate an error. So I'm manually triggering this flow. It's been a month since I looked at this, so it took me a minute to to figure it out. I got some variables, and every time that you use this, you have to get your variables. So we're going to go out and get the flow instance name. And I know that's really small, but that's workflow parens and then tags flow display name. This is the instance, and that's a bit longer. And what that's doing is going out and figuring out where it is that you're running. And the reason that we do that is because Power Automate runs in your region. So if you're in EMEA, you're going to get one URL for the Power Automate. And if you're in the US, you're going to get another one. If you're in Asia, you're going to get a third. And then this variable right here is just to cause an error. And so then we throw this error. And I'm thinking I'm showing you the wrong thing. Let's go back and keep all of that set up in mind. Oh, that's why. I came all prepared to talk sensitivity labels, so I hadn't looked at this in a little bit. So if we get an error, it throws an error, then we have run after set here. So that if there's an error ahead, if it's failed, skipped, or is timed out, it's going to cause this little piece of code to run. And so it gets an email subject, and those are the variables that we looked at earlier. And so it's going to send me a subject of error, the flow instance, and why it failed. It's going to do a body, and that body tells me everything that's gone on that was wrong, and you can make this do whatever you want, and it sends that email, then it terminates. We're still missing something. I might have to go into production. I should have practiced this before I gave it up as an option. All right.
Well, already I've learned something cool. I didn't know you could self-referential the running workflow.
Yeah,
Inside of a workflow. That's kind of cool.
that took a minute to figure out.
I believe it. That's not something you normally do.
Oh, you know what I need? Okay. If I only had a brain, I need to be in this right environment. Okay. So I'm going to show you the workflow that kicked this off. We have a tool called Team Hub. And what Team Hub does is it lets us take control of the team creation process. And so as part of that, it runs this join a team request. And so when somebody has to join a team, we go through a bunch of logic to see if they are qualified to be on that team. And if they are, we add them to the team. And if we're not, we don't. So here's how this really works. So there's two scopes here. There's do work and there is handle errors. And the handle errors is set to run only on the case of an error. So if it's skipped, timed out, or is failed, then we're going to run that errors. In the meantime, we're going to do this do work. And so here's all the stuff that happens. If any of this stuff here errors for any reason, then it's going to bail out of this scope and fall into this next scope. And in this next scope, we have more of these variables that we talked about. In light of the time, I won't go into the details of all of them, but I'm getting some details about the workflow, the script name, where it lives, the results. This one was kind of fun. It was just the result of the previous scope. And then I parse that so that I can get the details of what happened. And then once I've got that parsed, I pick out just the statuses that were failed. So then I'm going to go out and on SharePoint, I have a list. I'm going to create in that list a new list item that is the error that happened. So we blew up and here's why we blew up. And I've got all this information, the title, which is when the error started, the script name, start time, end time, status code, error message, the URL, the step name. So this is what I parsed out earlier. So this is the actual step in that big long list of items in that body that failed, and the text. And you'll notice that there's a notification sent that's blank. So I write that to SharePoint. I set my status to fail and I stop. And it does that anyway in most instances. Okay, so we ran the script. The script, for any number of reasons, blowed up and failed to finish. And so I caught it and I wrote a list item out into a SharePoint list. And I put that SharePoint list out in our base so that anybody could get to it. So then what happens? So then we come down here and we're going to send an email. I got to get back up to my flows. So here's the flow that does that. Send error notifications. I believe in meaningful names. So once again, when an item is created is the trigger. So I create that item and that triggers this flow. And there's no error on this flow. And so it's just do work. So I go out and get the error item, standard. I set the search string. And so the search string is the script name. And I'll show you the list in here in just a minute. You'll see how that it works. And so then I go through that list looking for anything that matches that title string right there. So here's the filter query. So this is the search string. And then I put it in. And then if the length of the did I send it yet is not done, then I send an email. And so this is the same kind of email that we looked at earlier. So it's going to be script name is at an error. This people to notify comes from a different list. Here's the error message and a link to the job. So when you get the error, if you're the guy assigned to watch that script, you click that link, it'll take you to the actual run in Power Automate where it failed so that you can dig into it, see why it worked. And then I update the item with, yeah, I sent a notification so we can ignore this line from now on. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Am I the only one who wants him to copy the failure condition onto the bottom of this to try and generate an infinite loop where the fail condition fails and then writes another line in the list and then fails and then writes another line in the list?
I would be lying if I said that wasn't the exact reason there's no error. Power Automate is very sensitive about that. So if you've created a condition that they think might possibly maybe cause that to happen, they'll bark at you and say
They give you a
can't.
warning, but they let you do it.
Yeah, they do. They
Yeah,
do.
but it'll catches it at runtime too. It'll create a bunch of them, but eventually, I believe it flags itself after how many.
Yeah, it'll halt it, won't it? Time out.
Yeah.
It only lets you do so much damage.
Where is the fun in that?
Thank you, Nanny State.
So here is my lists. Here's the log. Here's any errors that we've caught. You can see that since I fixed the list that was blowing up, it didn't ever break again. And then here is, here's who gets notified based on what we do. And as you can see, it's all me all the time. So what this allows you to do, if you're building a list for somebody else, is it allows you to set this up and then let them be in charge of who watches the Power Automate scripts to make sure that they run, and ensures that if something breaks for any reason, they get notified right away. They don't have to wait for Microsoft to wake up and say, hey, this has been failing for a while. Do you want to look at it? And I don't know what the default interval is. I think it's 3 days, maybe 7 days.
Yeah, I know it's days before you start getting those automated notifications. I don't know how many.
And it goes to the owner of the script, which may or may not be the person who can fix it.
There's the opportunity to be productive.
As long as we're here and we've finished that particular thing, let's look at option number 2. See, I started. Yeah.
You guys can.
I think this is the one. So this is the one that, nope, that isn't it.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Oh, here it is, new site setup. The name should have been obvious, right? So there's a hidden SharePoint list that you can trigger off of. And it's in your admin-SharePoint site collection. And it is do not delete SB list tenant admin all sites aggregated site collections.
Sounds like somebody put that in as a joke and it just sort of went out like that.
Well, this way people know that we can't delete it, right? And so whenever an item is triggered there, then in this particular case, I'm going out and creating some folders and setting so there's the two created folders, protected, not protected. Then I'm setting a document protection label to either this HMA label or other HMA label. And then those document labels have different properties in terms of what they allow people to do. So, and I think it's kind of fun that, as Josh said, Microsoft put a list name with that out in the public. I don't know that they ever expected anybody to find it.
So why would you do this as opposed to like doing a template script or something that just runs on every single site that's created to set those retention policies?
You could, this is just another way.
Oh, okay.
This is, and this, I feel like it's a little more controlled. And you can do a lot of logic here that might be more difficult there. The one thing I will say about this is that it doesn't, you go out and create the site, you think, okay, it's going to trigger in the next 4 or 5 minutes. It might take 4 hours, it might take 6 hours, it might take 12 hours. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, items that are triggered off of that list take a lot longer to run than other items. So with that, we have Adam has joined us. He is 4 minutes early. Woo! Hey,
how are we doing today?
We have been stalling for time. I'm going to stop sharing. We haven't been stalling for time. We have a brand new president. This is first meeting since you.
I was inducted during the last meeting, so this is my first full meeting.
And I'm trying to not use the word Shanghaied, but
Against his will, became president. Or against his best judgment.
Yeah, so when Greg asked me to join this committee, it was 3 years ago or whatever, he said, oh, don't worry, you won't have to do much. It's not really a big deal. It won't take much of your time. And now here we are, and he's got to make him eat his words at some point.
yeah. And so what Josh did is he introduced a show and tell. And so we've been playing show and tell for the last 25 minutes. And it makes most sense to me, El Presidente, that we have Christian introduce Adam.
Agreed. I just wanted to thank you first
Oh.
before we turn time over that one, but so yeah, so that's kind of the idea of the show and tell. I mean, we've got 2 of them there, a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. Again, if anybody wants to participate in that next month, we'd love to have some people who are less well known in the community come up and kind of just do their spotlight. So thank you, Kevin. I've believed for many years that you couldn't write code and didn't know how logic worked, and I think you may have started to shatter my illusions on that. So well done.
I were a programmer once.
I know, and I have not seen any evidence of that in as long as I've known you until now, so.
That's really good.
All right, thanks. And yeah, I guess, Christian, do you want to do introductions for our main event today?
Sure, happy to do that as I'm sitting here eating my late lunch. So sorry about that, but yeah. Adam is a fellow MVP. He's focused on Microsoft Teams. He's one of my go-to people for unified communication. So whenever somebody asks me a question, I'm like, I don't know. Let me give you Adam's email. That he's one of those. It's a long list of people that I do that. But he's going to be talking about Microsoft Teams in the contact center. So and just kind of going through that and walking us through. I think you've I know, is this a session that you're also doing? Oh, I should also pitch. He's also one of the organizers of the Comms V Next event, which is happening in April. And so if that's just over the hill, short drive to Denver for anybody that's interested in doing and like an all teams, all day event, or 2-day event. So definitely go check that out. But Adam, I'll let you,
I'm going to that actually.
yeah, I'll let you provide the rest of your bona fides, but yeah, there's a few of us that will be going to that in person.
Awesome. Well, why don't I do this? I'll just go ahead and start presenting, and apologies that I can't be there in person. That sounds like a fun time over in Utah. So, and we will definitely, give me just a minute. I saw some people asking about it, but we'll definitely put some information up in the chat here. It's commsvnext.com. And yeah, thanks, Christian. So, yeah, we're here to really quickly, and I'll just move on here, keep my slides moving. As far as it goes. So as Christian said, Adam Ball, I am a Teams MVP. I'm also a glutton for punishment. So I'm a co-founder of a company called Cloud Revolution. We do nothing but focus on Microsoft Teams, really specifically around the voice area, as well as a co-founder of the Comms V Next conference. And so just that was actually what I was just jumping off, and why I'm late is because we had our planning call for Comms V Next, and it's fun to see what's coming around and everything like that. But we can talk a little bit more about that at the end. Today, really what I want to go into is something that's kind of come up, and we'll talk about the why here in just a minute. But we're seeing if you've deployed Microsoft Teams for voice, we're seeing a lot more people start to ask or think about moving their legacy contact center over into Teams. And so we're going to talk through today, what does that mean? What does that look like, and everything like that. I don't know how many people are actually in the room. So I and all I can see is kind of a little bit of a picture of the screen, since it's a back of room camera. So if there's people who have got questions or anything, feel free to just shout out, interrupt, and we'll try to go from there. But love interaction as we go along.
Adam, if anybody's shy, put it in chat and I'll interrupt Adam, because I'm good at that.
Perfect. Excellent. I like those kinds of people as well. So, all right. So when we kind of sit down and start to talk about this, actually, before I even get going, and maybe we can kind of just have people put it into the chat of, rough number of hands or whatever, since I can't see the room, but do we have folks who have actually deployed, or a lot of folks who have deployed Teams as their voice platform, like replace their legacy phone systems with Teams? All right. Like hearing that. So from that standpoint, anybody who's coming from or has a legacy contact center still in place, like an Avaya, maybe Cisco, CCX, that kind of stuff. Maybe you're even made a transition and you're like, hey, I need to know how to integrate this. Maybe you went over to Five9 or something like that. So we're going to kind of try to talk through a lot of what we can accomplish with that. So what is it? Oh, hang on just a second. I might have to stop sharing here real quick. Apologies. It didn't want to pick up my changes here, so hang on just a second.
Not a demo without at least one glitch.
Exactly. Well, we've got a couple of ways to handle this, but let's just see if we can't make this happen a little differently. PowerPoint Live is just not wanting to be happy with me here. See if I can get a copy saved, and then we'll try this again. Maybe. No, it is super not happy now.
You've
All right.
offended.
I did offend it. All right, let's we will start this a different way then and go a little bit. There we go. We'll go this way. And we might make some chat more interesting as we go along. But so what does contact center typically look like? So these are different ways that you might see it. So, and sorry if this is kind of small for those in the room, but you might see something like this from like Anywhere 365, where you might have your web agent. You might see something from like Landis, who integrates inside of Teams here, or even like our Five9's friends that come in. And again, they might have their own web agent over here. And so what does this ultimately look like within Teams? And as we start to think through this, and what I want to call out is realistically, today's session is not about what products can you do, but really wanting to think high level of what are the models of how do we integrate, why might you do this, and then what are the steps to get you there ultimately. And hopefully we'll have some real takeaways for you at the end, so you can say, all right, this is what I need to be thinking about as I move forward if I'm thinking about moving to a contact center inside of Microsoft Teams. So when we start thinking about Teams and contact center, what we start thinking about is what are our connectivity models? And with Microsoft, there are three specific ones. There's the Connect model, which kind of is our most basic. Then we get into Extend, and then we get into the most advanced, which is the Power connectivity model. And we're going to go through all three. I will apologize up front. You all get a kick out of this. I'm an engineer by trade. I am not a marketing or graphic artist, so you get to deal with scribbles and drawings that look like probably like a engineer on a whiteboard. So as we start, I want to kind of go through this, and we'll talk through the Connect model here to begin with. And this is the most simple. This is what we actually see most organizations gravitating to. I'll provide this deck afterwards, and in my notes I actually have some links to the Microsoft Learn articles, so you can actually go find the certified vendors that are actually in each of these three models, the Connect, the Extend, and Power models. So if you're interested in specific vendors, you can go find that. But with the Connect model, what's interesting here is we have, let me grab my laser pointer here. So if you have a call coming inbound from your PSTN, just so I pick up my cell phone and I'm calling into customer service as an example, that number is going to actually ring over to a session border controller. Don't get too hung up about that if you're not really sure what that is or where it even lives. It can live on your premises. That was traditionally the way most people went. It could live in the cloud in Azure. It could live in a carrier and direct routing as a service. Doesn't really matter. This SBC is then going to decide, does that call route over to Teams for a user? So just like me, it might route, hang a left at Albuquerque and it goes over and it talks to me. And then I get my direct call at my direct line. That SBC might also say, oh, this is going to the customer service agent, or I need to make it go to the customer service contact center. So then it routes it over and hangs a right and goes over to the contact center at this point in time. And then at that point, the agent themselves, what they're going to do is they're going to actually be in both Teams and contact center. Now, that might mean that they have a separate contact center application open and they have Teams open. Some of the contact center vendors have taken their application and embedded that into a Teams app so they can make it kind of feel like it's all cohesive. But realistically, they're technically two different apps that are happening in that case. And realistically, the only thing in the Connect model that's happening here is that we're passing presence from the contact center back to Teams, or vice versa, sorry. Teams presence is being passed back into the contact center. So as an agent, if I need to pass that call along to somebody else, I can see their presence, and then I can route that call back to them. But that when I route that call back to them, it's going to go back through the session border controller at that point. So in the case of the Connect model, it's very critical to have this session border controller here. But really the way I always look at session border controllers is I call them the Rosetta Stones of the voice world. They talk to everything, they can translate and go from there. But like I said, the connectivity model, very, very simplistic, just kind of keeps everything in its own little container. So we have contact center, we have teams, we have everything, and nothing really lives together. And we're just passing a few pieces of data back and forth through presence APIs, but not a whole lot else. So hopefully that makes sense with the Connect model. Any questions? Feel free to post them up. So as we move over to the Extend model, so this is kind of taken one step up. So we went from really basic to now we're going into Extend. What's really interesting here for most people is if you're using calling plans, this is the format that you need to work with calling plans. So Microsoft is now your carrier. At this point in time, we're not going to, with Connect, you don't really have that option to utilize the Connect methodology with calling plans. And that's because there's no SBC in play. That's all happening up at Microsoft. So with the Extend model, our phone number or our phone can call in, and we can bring this into a Teams auto attendant or call queue service number. And now we can bring it into the SBC. And what's going to happen is really teams in the contact center are now talking to each other on a more in-depth level. And we're starting to use the various APIs. We might be using an SDK in order to provide the agent themselves a seamless experience inside the Teams client. Notice that we don't have a line going over here to the contact center from the agent, because the agent never leaves Teams. In this case, with the Extend model, we are dependent on the Teams client at this point in time as an agent for everything to happen. And so that's really the big difference between the Connect and the Extend model is that we have a much more in-depth integration between the two platforms. And so this is a lot with Graph API, this connectivity between the teams and the contact center. In some cases, what we're seeing is the contact center has that call come into them, and then they're actually using federation between the contact center and Teams to pass that call back to the agent, so that as the agent, we're sitting in Teams, we're not doing anything outside of Teams, but the contact center is using federation. In some cases, what we've seen is the agent is actually using a specialized Teams client that's built off of the SDK, and so that they're not actually using the full-blown Teams in order to take those calls. But in all cases, they're just using Teams. They're not, the call control never leaves Teams. It sits completely within the Teams environment for call control. And so that's a big difference with that.
As I'm looking at, you say that we have to be getting our voice from Microsoft. Does that mean you can't use this in a country that doesn't have Microsoft Voice?
No. So the only difference here is that we can use calling plans. So you can still use your own SBC. The big difference is calling plans are not, you wouldn't use the Connect model with calling plans. You can only use the Extend model or the Power model with calling plans. And so that's the big difference here. So if you did have the Extend model, you can still use it with your own SBC. So if you're in a country or you have a phone, like let's say you have, it's getting harder to do this. It was really easy when Microsoft only had like 10 countries that they were in for calling plans. I could like pull one out of a hat, and now they're up to like 20 something or 30 something. But let's say you had a contact center number in China as an example, and you wanted to pull that into your contact center. You could still offer that phone number, bring it into your own SBC, and then have the SBC route it up and into the contact center with the Extend model still. So absolutely, you could do it. Like I said, this is an optional connection, and it just depends on the solution. So different vendors do this different ways. Some will have you call in from the PSTN, and it'll either hit your SBC or the calling plan, and it'll go straight to Teams. And then Teams is going to interact with the contact center. In some cases, the PSTN you call in, whether it's with calling plans or an SBC, and it actually forwards over to the contact center first and then comes back to Teams. So it just kind of depends on the solution, all the different vendors, and there's a lot of them now with the Extend certification, have just a little bit different take on it and how they've accomplished that. So from that example, and like I said, I'm not trying to get into specific vendors here within this. It's really just what are the models of how you can accomplish this. The Connect model is far and away what most people have done, although with what I'm seeing now is more and more people are moving towards this Extend model. And really the reason why is this integration here where everything is happening between the contact center and Teams through Graph API and everything, and the agent themselves are just living within Teams. And so we're not seeing as many, you're not having to maintain two different things, and you're trying to get a lot more in-depth or more connectivity within the Microsoft stack with the Extend model. So you see things like Power Automate and Power Apps become much more critical or much more capable within the scaling out of the Extend model. So when it comes down to it, with the Connect model, even though you might be able to have multiple channels, so you might be able to have things like email or web chat or anything like that come into the contact center in the Connect model, all of that's happening inside of the contact center's application and not within Teams. As you start to drive to Extend, all of those things, those omni or multi-channel streams are now happening inside of Teams instead of inside of the contact center client. And so that's the big difference. All right. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah.
All right. So next, as we go forward, we have our power model. And so this one's really interesting to me because it's really the critical piece here is that it's going to be based around the interactivity with Azure Communication Services. And ACS is really, to me, is as somebody who's done Microsoft UC and voice specifically for a long time, this is really a fascinating area because it's not Microsoft from a product standpoint. If you think back to like OCS, Lync, Skype for Business, and now Teams, that was always the platform, and you kind of got in on the platform. Azure Communication Services is really the foundational elements where they're building, so maybe if you've seen Twilio or somebody like that, or even, Amazon Connect, things like that, where you're able to build on the platform. That's really what ACS is, and really fascinating where Microsoft is going with this. So in this case, what you end up doing is you're bringing up PSTN, and it's actually landing through Azure Communication Services. Technically, it's landing on a session border controller that's being run up inside of ACS here. So there's just this big black box of ACS. But now once you're landed up here inside of ACS, now we have a lot of APIs and things like that that can go back and forth between ACS and Teams. We're going to talk about a little bit about that here in just a moment with the Microsoft Digital Contact Center platform. But this is where the power model really becomes powered is by ACS. And so when the call comes in through ACS, it's going to land inside of Teams, and all of the call control sits between Azure Communication Services and Teams. And then we're only leveraging the contact center through some API calls back and forth. And so it's very, very interesting where all of this is headed. Just to be clear, there are currently only 2 partners that are going through the certification process for the power model that I've heard of. So this is still very new from that side of things. So most people sit in the Connect or now into the Extend model as we go forward. So with that, just to keep things moving along, this was announced in 2022, the Microsoft Digital Contact Center platform. And this is really, really interesting to me because Microsoft for a long time has said, we're not going to get into the contact center. We're not going to offer a contact center, especially if you go back to like Link or Skype, those kinds of things. Microsoft always said that's a third party. We're going to stay out of that. And then Microsoft came along and introduced the digital contact center platform. And it's very interesting to me that when we get to it is what is it? And can I just buy it? People think about it like, oh, I just want to go buy my product. I just want to get my per user per month component. And really what Microsoft's DCCP is, it is truly a platform. It is not just a single product, as you can see here. It is built on, and so this kind of goes back to like what Amazon has been doing recently with Connect and Chime and things like that, where you build it yourself. And so this is kind of that. I want to build my own contact center. What does that look like? Couple of key things that it obviously depends on is Azure AD. And so really the digital contact center platform is probably the best example of a power contact center connectivity because it is using the Azure Communication Services here, but it's also really tightly tied to Dynamics 365 customer service, as well as the Teams, and then their acquisition of Nuance for artificial intelligence within the contact center space. There's like, I didn't put this down here because there's like 7 or 8 different pieces of Nuance that are utilized in the digital contact center platform. And then we get the entire Power Platform suite with Power Apps, Power BI, Power Virtual Agents, Power Automate. And so there's quite a few benefits to the Microsoft Digital Contact Center platform. You get really deep integration with the Microsoft stack. If you are a Dynamics shop, I would highly recommend that you at least take a look at the Digital Contact Center platform. It is very much an omni-channel capable component. And we use that term, and I should probably have defined this earlier. Omni-channel is really just how do I want to bring in anything, whether that might be SMS text messaging into the contact center besides just voice or email. I get requests for people saying, I want to bring in WhatsApp into my contact center. Obviously, the times are changing and more as millennials and Gen Z and the next gen come along, they're looking to engage with us in different methodologies. I know myself as squarely as Gen X. I'm not Christian. I'm not quite as Gen X as you are, at least from a music standpoint. But I am still more apt to interact with a company on almost any other technology other than a voice call at this point. I'd much rather chat through web chat or text or what have you. So we really are trying to figure out how, for most companies, how we can engage customers or outside folks through omni-channel solutions. Maybe that's even internal people if you've got a service desk.
By the way, I
yeah.
love the age jokes. Thank you.
Well, you have a very eclectic taste in music, and I always appreciate it because it broadens my horizons a little bit. So, but you have just a few years on me on that one for Gen X. So, not many, but just a few. So with self-service and chatbots, this goes back to that comment about how do we get people to be able to interact without maybe our help? Power Virtual Agents, how can we give them that ability to solve their own problems? Sentiment analysis is becoming really a big deal of, grading agents and saying, or figuring out like, do we have something that's frustrating our user or our callers? I don't want to call them users, but just callers, whether they're outside or inside to the organization. And then lastly, with the Power BI, or not the Power BI, the Power Platform, that ability to have low code, no code capabilities, this really ties into the ability of the citizen developer. So now you don't have to have these huge development teams. If you've got ServiceNow, Salesforce, SAP or something, I always make the joke that if you buy SAP, it's like, we've deployed SAP and here's your 6 consultants that are now with you till the end of time. With the Power Platform, we're now getting into that point where we can start to see that citizen developer happen.
Instead of 6 consultants, it's now 12.
It's now 12. Sorry, inflation's been tough on us, hasn't it? All right. So with that, why would you think about it? Why would you do this? And realistically, there's a lot of reasons now. I've done a lot of Microsoft UC deployments. One of the biggest ones I did was 90 countries, 30,000 users, and we moved them from Avaya to Skype for Business. This was like circa 2015, 2016. And they were like, oh, we're all in except for the contact center. They left the entire Avaya contact center in place, but they moved the entire company over. I've done this so many times, and this is what I would always hear. What's been interesting is over the last year or so, there's really three things that have started to drive where people are going with this. Number one is cloud-based solutions. As people have moved towards the cloud, they're looking at things like business continuity and redundancy, and they're saying, all right, if I'm moving everything to the cloud already, why am I staying in an on-premises deployment of, say, Avaya or UCCX or something of that nature? And so now they're looking at cloud-based solutions. And as they look towards that, there's less limitations of pulling that in. So whether you go to a connect model, so you could use a third-party contact center that has a connected model to Teams, well, now you can pass presence back and forth, and now your agents can actually have a more integrated view into the company. Second is COVID. I know we're all sick and tired of talking about it, but from that standpoint, companies use that to drive onto different communicate UC platforms, and with Teams being one of them, they're looking at it and they're going, I got everybody in the cloud, everybody's on Teams except for my contact center. Everybody's happier with Teams. Why don't I bring the contact center along and have just a single environment? And so COVID really did accelerate this, because companies went all in and they started thinking about going back to business continuity around. Nobody ever thought about, in a business continuity standpoint, was, what if all my offices were closed? Everybody thought about business continuity of, well, if this office closed, everybody shifts over to this office or what have you. Nobody had thought about it. So now it's, how do I get my contact center to be as flexible as the rest of the company? And that's by driving them into the UCaaS platform, and in this case, Teams. And then lastly, the other thing that I'm seeing people drive to, that's the reason why they're thinking about this, is that we kind of just touched on it, is the need to go beyond voice. So the ability to bring in SMS and text and WhatsApp and web chat into their contact center platform. And in many cases, the platform that they may be on may be able to do it, but it either took more integration or a lot more cost, or maybe it needed a whole uplift from revision to revision. And so we're seeing that as people drive towards omni-channel solutions, being that they're saying, if I'm going to evaluate it, I now want to bring it into Teams because that's my communications platform of choice. Out of curiosity, if anybody's got a different reason, I'd love to hear it, but these were the three top ones that I've seen over the past year. All right, so I'm right up against the time that you asked me for, so I've got some steps on how do we get started, and really what I want this to leave everybody with is some practical tasks that you could say, if my organization is coming up with this, what do I need to do to get there? And so first off, I'll just say this. As somebody whose team goes out and deploys these all on a daily basis, number one might be most important. My team might be like, yes, document your current system, find out what it's doing. Almost every time we walk in and say, all right, well, what do you need to do? They go, we don't know. It's pretty impressive to see how many times we have no idea what the call flows are doing, and we have to sit down and do a lot of business analyst work with the business unit to say what's going on, and literally have somebody call in and start dialing down and figuring out what the call flows are. There's some automated tools that can do that for us as well, but in many cases we're just brute forcing it because we've got different business units that are affected. So anything that you can do to document your current system for call flows. The other one is reports. get a lot of folks who, as we start to migrate, they don't know that which reports are being emailed out or which managers are using which reports at all. So really surveying the business and talking to the business is really critical as you start to prepare for this. And it's really just know what you need to do, because you can't, the way I look at it, whenever we're migrating from system A to system B, it's kind of like the doctor model of do no harm. So we want the same or better. And so you can't go and like break somebody's call flow that might be super critical to the business.
Do you find, Adam, that the Microsoft call center will do everything that the old school on-prem stuff did?
Absolutely. And I actually say, I'll say this, I say it does it and it does it more, for sure. So there's no doubt in that. Usually the biggest factor that we see is the reports, getting the reports to look like what people want them to look like. I've had more than one company come back and ask us to put reports in Power BI, and they'll literally hand us like an old Avaya reporting document, and they say, "Can you make it look like this?" And we're like, "Yeah, we could put columns," and they're like, "No, we want it to look exactly like this." And it's like we got to go and like, it's like put like a 1980s filter on a Power BI dashboard to make it look
extra for the green bar paper.
Exactly. So it's kind of funny how that works, but that's usually one of the struggles that we face.
Are they ever a TPS report?
Yeah, exactly. So as you think about these things, think about what shortcomings that you might have today are the nice to haves. When I sit down and talk with business units, it's like, what do you wish the system did today? Most business units have a list. IT might not know about that list, but if you actually talk to the business units, they'll have their shortcomings. They'll be like, I wish the product did this. This is really good because as you start to evaluate your vendors and you start to talk about what you might use, this list is what's going to drive. 1 and 2 are going to be what drives the solution ultimately. I know it sounds really funny, is understanding business unit or business problems in the business process really makes it the right solution when you find it, versus the, hey, IT told me to use this. Doesn't typically go well for contact center. So which model works best for you? Going back to that connect, extend, and power model, figuring out what works best for you. If you are on calling plans today, you just need to know that I'm going to skip the connect model and I'm going to go to an extend model. I'm just going to look for the extend solutions. If you're on direct routing as a service, if you're on direct routing itself like that, where you have your own SBC, you might be able to use the connect model and it might do exactly what you need for the moment. So some advantages within that. This one is really a big question. Are you all in on Microsoft, including Dynamics? Because if you are, you might really think about the digital contact center platform. If you're already invested in the licensing for Dynamics and Teams and everything, the uplift for some of the Power Platform might be smaller than looking at an omni-channel solution from another vendor. So that's a big question for you. And if you skip step 4 because you're like, I'm using Salesforce, you need to choose a vendor at this point. And not to say that if you're not using Dynamics that you cannot use the digital contact center platform. It's just if you want that interaction with CRM and to be able to do dynamic data dips, etc. Currently, the digital contact center platform really only plays with Dynamics. That'll change as we go forward, just kind of level setting on that. So after you've kind of started to choose a vendor and steps 5 and 6 kind of have to happen simultaneously, you really have, and you could probably reverse them a little bit, or maybe I need to move 6 up to in front of 4, but what will be in scope? Because you got to decide, am I going like for like? Am I really just trying to get voice for voice? Or what am I trying to do? Am I going to try to expand into multi-channel or omni-channel? And this is where a lot of customers struggle because their people are used to only voice, and now you're trying to give them the ability to do email and other things at the same time. And some agents just are not trained. And so that really leads into step 7, which is, what is your adoption and change management plan? COVID was really interesting in that many companies finally achieved what they always thought they could do, which is, why can't I hand somebody a piece of technology and have them adopt it? Like, if I hand my mom WhatsApp, she figures it out. Like, there's no training class or 7 hours of training that she has to go to figure out WhatsApp, and she's in her mid 70s. Why do all these why do all these company employees have such a problem figuring out technology? Well, in COVID, they all adapted. That being said, handing a contact center agent a new platform and not giving them anything is a recipe for disaster and a recipe for dissatisfied customers, whether internal or external, as well as stressed out and dissatisfied agents. And so really coming up with what that looks like so that you can educate them around what that is really critical. But I don't necessarily know that we have to go to the ACM levels that we saw pre-pandemic. And then lastly is to now move on to deploy. And so with that, these are kind of just some, like I said, some real takeaways that you can have, hopefully, that you can sit down and say, all right, this is where I need to go. I could have gone in with, I would say, one last thing on beyond step 8 of deploy. And it kind of ties back into choosing your vendor, is ask what their support model is. There are some vendors out there that will only support you through a third party, i.e. the systems integrator that deployed it. There are others that will take you on directly. And so you just need to know what that looks like for you. So in a post-deployment world of what your support's going to look like. So with that, I apologize, I'm a few minutes over, but I wanted to see if,
That's good.
all right, I was gonna say, are there questions here at this point in time around the contact center?
Is it additive licensing? So if I've got everything else, including Dynamics, I just want to add call center, is it like a $2 per person per month upcharge, or is it $100 per person per month?
That depends on the vendor. So like if you're all in on Dynamics, if I go back into that slide and you look at everything else that's there, I'll be honest, if you start adding the Power Platform licensing and you start adding all those components, it can get quite expensive. Power Automate and all the different components, the nuance stuff, it adds up very quickly. For Omnichannel, I would tell you, depending on the number of agents, I see a lot of customers who have anywhere from 20 to 50 agents. I think my largest customer has got about 400 agents. As you grow up in number of agents, the cheaper per agent it gets across the board for the most part. But at that 20 to 50 agent company, if you truly need omnichannel, and I say truly because I get a lot of people who say, oh, absolutely, we got to have omnichannel. And at the end of the day, you're just doing voice and you've paid a lot for features that you're not utilizing. But if you actually are going to use omnichannel, I would tell you to expect somewhere between $150 to $225 per agent per month for one of the omnichannel solutions. As you go into the non-omnichannel, some of the multi-channels where they might not offer all the channels, they only offer a couple. You can get that down into the $75 to $95 per agent per month range if you're not going with the Microsoft Digital Contact Center platform. Other questions?
I can't be the only one brave enough to ask questions.
So is there you talked about 20 to 50, it's kind of an interesting spot, larger ones certainly starts to make more sense financially. Is 20 kind of like the place where you'd say it starts to make sense to look at it and other solutions fit better for a team of 5 to 10?
Yeah, so when you get into the team of 5 to 10, I would tell you very much that really this goes back to what your needs are. Um, I've got a few customers that are in that 5 to 10 space, and I'll be honest, they pay because they needed the full suite. They're paying in the upwards of $200 per agent per month. There's quite a few organizations or quite a few technologies out there that are not certified contact centers, because most of the time what I find is that when you're in that 5 to 10 agent range, what it really is that Teams auto attendance and call queues probably give you the functionality that you need by and large, but it's really more about reporting that you're missing in many cases, not all, but in many cases, in which case there's plenty of vendors out there that are now providing more robust reporting around auto attendance and call queues, and they're leveraging some of the APIs that Microsoft has out there, and they're getting better data than what you might see in the call quality dashboard, and so that's a big differentiator. And what we see in that is it's more, you see the vendors representing it as contact center light. In some of those cases, you can get quite affordable, where it's in the range of $10 per user per year, but you typically have to license all the users in your organization for that reporting in order to get it.
Sounds good.
Christian wants to know if there's a ROI calendar.
An ROI calendar?
Calculator. Yeah.
Calculator. Okay.
Thank you, Typo.
I was like, that's an interesting one. So I haven't seen anybody have an ROI calculator per se, and I think that kind of depends on what platform you go with, which vendor you go with. Each one is going to be slightly different. I would say though that I have, for some of my customers, I have actually had them come back to me and say, I got to get off of this because I've got 40 agents, but Avaya wants $250,000 just in support for my 40 agents for next year, because I got to keep my entire platform around. I got to keep the core components of the platform around. So from an ROI standpoint, it probably really depends on what you're coming from, where you're going. And in many cases, though, whether it's UCCE, Avaya, especially those two platforms, if all you've got left is contact center, the ROI is usually pretty quick.
I've got one more question, but it's only loosely related to this. The digital contact center platform supports SMS, but when do those of us without it and just regular Teams finally get to have SMS?
Wow, that would be a question I would love to be able to answer. Because I actually have customers who are asking for it regularly, just like you all are asking me. I don't have an answer for that. The product group hasn't come out and said anything that's public at this point in time. So.
Yeah, it keeps feeling like it's getting closer, but.
I love the fact that, I mean, I can't even tell you how many years in the Teams admin center, the PSTN and SMS usage report has had that preview next to it, and I mean, it's got to be 2-3 years at this point that SMS has been listed in that report, that we haven't seen it. So there are other vendors that are bringing SMS into Teams, just not natively through Microsoft at this point in time.
When was that? Oh, sorry.
Oh, maybe
2.1, whatever it is.
whatever.
Sorry, Christian.
I was just going to ask, when was that first Teams airlift in Bellevue? Was that 2018?
2019.
Was it 2019?
Mm-hmm.
The time.
I know.
Time stopped somehow, at some point. But yeah, that was I mean, there's a lot of conversation around SMS at that event. So, okay.
Yep.
I don't think it's moved any since then, but
no, not really.
There's a cost associated with it. That's why we're not seeing it.
Yeah.
Use potential or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried.
They've got to figure it out.
The cost,
Yeah.
come on, let them eat cake. Come on.
I will say I do know that it will be coming. Like I said, there's just nothing that they've publicly been able to come out and say other than that. So
I guess we gotta find those PMs and harass them at Microsoft.
so I'm going to completely do this because that was like a perfect segue into my next shameless promotional slide that Christian kind of stole from me at the beginning. But CommsB Next, we will actually have folks from the product group coming out to Denver. So if you know Jamie Stark, he's in charge of the team's admin center. Folks like that will be coming out. I know Caruana is planning to come out and everything. So this would be a good spot that's coming up that you can, if you're not going to say Enterprise Connect, that you can come out and try to ask questions. We also have folks like Tom Arbuthnot and other MVPs coming in from around the world to speak. So great spots to ask good questions like that.
I am also traveling all the way from Lehi, Utah, but I will only have questions, no answers.
Well, those are great things to have. So, and I love that my friends in Utah are just a quick drive away. So,
Are you gonna hitchhike again, Christian?
Whatever it takes to
Probably.
get there. Yeah.
As I say,
You know, we'll all load up in a smelly car and
it's a short 8-hour drive from Denver to
That's right.
Salt Lake.
I thought
so.
about driving. It's a beautiful drive, but
Yeah.
I've unfortunately I got to get back quick because it's got the is it BYU or U of U graduation that's happening like the Friday after, and I have both of those to attend. So yeah, I've got a son that just graduated from the U, and my wife is graduating from BYU, and one of them is that Friday. I think it's my wife's, so
Really?
I could probably get away with ditching the son's event, but not the wife's event.
Not the wife's, yeah. So, UVU is at Utah Valley
No,
Or-
University of Utah.
or University of
U
Utah?
of U, yeah.
Oh, U of U. Okay, I thought you said UVU. So, yeah. So CommsB Next will be a great chance to ask those questions. I will say this. I'm just going to put my contact info up here for anybody. Feel free to reach out. Just ask questions. I'm always happy to answer questions and try to put things out there. If you're just kind of like, I heard this, whatever, feel free, hit me up on any of these, and always happy to engage in conversation from that standpoint.
thank you.
Absolutely. And if
Yeah,
there's
thanks so
questions,
much.
yeah, and I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes if people have questions that are not contact center related, but are Teams or Teams voice related. Teams voice related is where I would really put it there. You probably pull something out on governance or something like that, and you probably play stump the chump pretty quick.
And if we have any other questions as well, just in general.
Adam.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, sorry, got kind of a weird delay, but I was just gonna say I probably have a few questions after I watch this recording, so you can probably expect an email from Adam.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Happy to. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for presenting. Thanks for squeezing us in between your other meetings and everything else going on.
Oh, absolutely. Glad to help out, and always happy to help another user group. I know if anybody does have contacts that are here in the Denver area, March 15th, we're going to have the Colorado UC user group is having an event at the Microsoft offices from 11 to 3. We'll be talking through contact center as well, but we're also going to talk about Viva and the employee experiences. And we've got folks flying in to talk about that. So if any of your organizations have folks here in the Denver area, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to connect you up with that.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool. Well, everybody, I was gonna say I'll wave goodbye and let you have a great night then.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, team.
Thanks a lot.
Round of applause for Adam. Yeah, so just a reminder, we've got a call out for anybody who wants to do a community spotlight next month. We'd love to have you present however much time you want to fill, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you feel would be good. If you have any suggestions or anything that you want to hear about in future user group meetings, we'd love to hear about that as well. We'd love to really cater to what you guys want to hear and make sure that we get some good presentations that are interesting and informative for everybody. Again, just send any contact. You can respond to the chat on this meeting. We'll probably get it that way, or info@utsharepoint.org.
If you hit reply on the monthly meeting invites, that's where that goes.
Yep. Apply to the email. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to make this more community driven and make sure to get you guys the stuff that you want. Is there any questions that anybody has just for the community that we can mind meld and try and answer for you?
My mind is melting.
I think they found all the answers to all their questions in my YouTube series where we go through the M365 AMA, which the link you can find in the chat.
Wow. Wow.
Shameless plug, shameless plug.
Absolutely shameless.
And yet relevant. Again, go to YouTube and just search for Buckley Planet. You'll find it.
Another shameless plug.
Just keep going, Christian.
I'm also selling some office furniture.
I was waiting for the collab talk or the tweet gems or something like that to come out.
I'm waiting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for showing up. Thanks for being here. We look forward to seeing you again next month, and look out for those emails coming when we've got a topic picked out and ready to go.
Thanks
Bye,
a lot.
y'all.
See you later. Bye.